Hi there, my name is Catherine Stone. I am the Director of Spatial Planning in Regional Government in South Africa. I am an urban and regional planner by training, and I'm here to talk about levers for public sector officials as change agents. I think what I've learned through my experience is these levers are often more about how we do our work and not so much about what we do. How do we show up? How do we relate with others to consolidate knowledge, experience, and expertise, align our purpose, and build momentum? And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. To start with, it's a tough environment in the public sector. You need to look after yourself. Change is an incremental and long-term process. We need to be resilient, ready, and patient. Importantly, we need to have perspective. This is about you and how you show up. It also is really important to understand you can't do this alone. Change is about building a critical mass of alignment and interest and purpose. And as an agent in this process, you have to be useful. You have to build understanding, your own understanding and understanding between others, and you need to build value. You need to be open to building formal and informal connections, alliances, and partnerships. You need to be disciplined and persistent, hold spaces and maintain momentum. Steady does it. We need to be optimistic and ambitious, but to do this, we need to be resilient, ready, and patient, as I've mentioned. So seek what excites and stimulates you professionally to sustain you through the slog. The world is messy and dynamic. The public sector is beset with wicked problems. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And change will be incremental, it'll be slow, with long, quiet periods in between. And it often is where you might not expect. Sometimes it's by doing your work and building your tools that you start to build accountability systems or checkpoints. And in those, things shift. I'm a town planner and we produce spatial plans, and we're often accused of producing plans that are ineffective, that just sit in shelves. But those plans become benchmarks. They become something to measure new proposals against, new plans or different plans or opposing plans, and to catalyze a conversation about, well, what exactly is the change we're looking for? Do we want to change the plan? Or actually, do we still agree that plan is what we want to do, and therefore that proposal is not okay? Sometimes it's just about waiting for that coincidental or serendipitous alignment of the right people with the right motives at the right time to bring about a step change. And for me, that happened after I'd left my previous employer, which was a municipality, and had done all the groundwork. So you have to be patient, but you have to be ready when this happens to feed into those opportunities. Importantly, what we need to do to maintain momentum is line up the milestones along the way to celebrate progress, and to feed into the political need for good news, for demonstration of delivery, especially around election cycles, and to motivate our partners. This will build goodwill, confidence, and trust in your work and set you up for a new term of office. We need to understand we're a small cog in a very big system. So we need to understand those systems and how those systems shape and limit how people make decisions, people that we rely upon. For example, I had to really understand the financial systems and engage with the chief financial officer in the municipality to understand how I could leverage opportunities to shift resources, to bring targeting into how we allocate budgets. You need to understand the vested interests, the motives and incentives, the realpolitik. Have you read the leadership's manifesto? Are there hooks there that you can link between what you need to do and what they want to do? What's really important is to understand the interface between policy and regulation. Regulation will drive business as usual, regardless of policy intent. So you might have written a policy, a really good one at that, but what are the regulations that officials are applying in their day-to-day lives, the rules, and are those working for you or against you? Or are there hooks in legislation that you can use to change the regulations to align the two? Or are there bridging mechanisms you can use to align the two? Really important in all of this and having perspective is to be humble. Often I've found we don't understand our audience when we're going to deliver a message, and sometimes even if you are the right person to deliver a message, you may not be the best one. But in these processes, don't compromise your integrity. I talked about being useful and build understanding and value. Your work will be stronger and better for the contribution of other disciplines, but you have to win them over. And that's not an entitlement. You need to win that space at the table. So you understand your space, but do you understand others, how they relate to and impact on your work? Spend time getting to know other people's businesses, other departments, whether they be the engineers, the financial people, other planners working in the more regulatory space or the proactive space, or the local economic development officials. Do you understand what drives their work, the health and education planners, so that you can understand the linkages, articulate the relationships and interdependencies between what you need to do and what they're doing, and how their decisions impact on yours? Can you go into a conversation with them and speak their language when trying to build that connection? It's also really useful to bring intelligence into that space, to fascinate people, to interest them by bringing in the evidence. What we did in order to break open a conversation around human settlement, even though we weren't housing officials, was to do studies and to bring in evidence and to develop intelligence to say the housing market failure in many of our towns in South Africa is really big, much bigger than we thought. And it impacts not just on the housing officials responsible for building housing for the poor, it impacts on those responsible for the financial sustainability of a municipality and the province, in fact, the region. It impacted on the planners, on the regulatory planners, on the land valuers, on the economic development planners and strategists. We were able to show through this evidence how the significant scale of housing market failure impacts on everyone's work and the long-term future and success, even at a political level, on really thinking hard about how we engage with the housing challenge, which most of our cities encounter. So we were able to bring value into the space to earn our space at the table. Other ways we've done that is to bring data, intelligence, as I've spoken, but to bring services. Could we perhaps map the budget and reflect on insights arising from that to catalyze a different conversation, or to give insights that provoke people to really think about what they're doing or what they want to do? What other disciplines can we offer to others' work, or resources to bring these in? We were able to offer the services of a landscape architect to partner with a road upgrading engineer and a stormwater upgrading engineer who was working in an informal settlement to make such a bigger difference, a difference that then each party could celebrate and win prizes for. And there we were able to build partnerships. Finally, it's really important about sharing information freely and making your data open. In government, we have so much access to intelligence. We have so much access to data. Can we make that available and share that with others? Because we're not the only ones, nor do we have necessarily the resources or the capacity to realize the value of that information and what it might do for our work. So on that note, we need to be open. We need to be open to building connections, alliances, and partnerships, because often this is where the change can land, both in formal and informal ways. I think it's important to note that formal partnerships are slow. They absorb a lot of energy, and they achieve often quite little in the short term because a lot of bureaucracy is involved, a lot of going up the chain and down the chain, but they are politically important. But at the same time, strengthen those informal networks. Create spaces for interdisciplinary engagement around shared challenges, or where you could ask for help and people could have an opportunity to exercise their expertise in your space, where you could share information that might be useful to one another, where you can debate and listen, where you can make the interdependencies between our different mandates and government explicit. We need one another, and together we can do more, but we need to understand where that is. Can we create spaces to present a challenge, gather evidence, shared interests, fill gaps, and invite people into those spaces from outside it? Academia, non-governmental organizations, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. How do we forge partnerships and alliances off the back of these spaces? While you're doing that, sure, it's important to respect procedure, hierarchies, and structures, but don't be a slave to them. The best partnerships don't happen because people were told to work together, because they were put in the same department and expected to work together, but because they want to work together, because it's interesting, challenging, inspiring, rewarding to work together. Put the effort into those relationships with people that do the work, the mid-level professionals. You can also leverage partnership opportunities by bridging the gap with academia and non-governmental organizations. When I worked for the metropolitan city of Cape Town, we ran a program in partnership with the University of Cape Town called the Knowledge Transfer Program. And this started to bridge the gap between academic research and the work we were doing in the public sector. We were able to suggest thesis topics in areas of research that would benefit public sector work. We were able to create opportunities for officials to document their experience in an academic way. It's really important to open your organization up for research. Make data available that people can mine, that people can use. because then they'll share their data with you. Being open to researchers doing applied research in your space, create those opportunities, because that will deepen and strengthen your work, but also build your networks amongst those who have knowledge to contribute. NGOs want to work with government, and often it's a funding requirement that they do work with government, and often they can bring in international partners, resources or expertise that would be difficult for you to do, or perhaps you can't afford it. They can also engage with more controversial areas, as can academics. They can create safe, more neutral spaces for stakeholder conversations. They can bridge the politics between different arms of government, where you might not be able to do that, but they can still play an advocacy role, putting pressure on leadership. And they enrich the process by bringing on-the-ground perspectives from communities who may be more connected, they may be more connected with than we are as officials. And in doing all of this, finally, it's really important to be disciplined and persistent. That requires energy, and then you have to pace yourself. Steady does it. Hold those spaces and maintain momentum. Always think about, how do you capture the institutional memory and learning? We lose so much institutional memory in government, and we land up treading the same old ground. How do we capture that and move forward? Maintain the continuity and regularity in the forums, even if attendance dips up and down. For information exchange, discussion, and collaboration, hold that space, maintain accountability. Don't underestimate the importance of notes or minutes, but don't spend meetings on minutes. Appreciate people for their contributions, celebrate their work, however small, and celebrate the collaborations. And be purposeful. Finally, really important to be purposeful. Curate your conversations that show the interrelationships and how we depend on one another, and we need to work together to build those partnerships towards change.